Sometime last year, I discovered an incredible feature of XWayland called Rootful mode. Now, this root has nothing to do with root permissions. This is paired with the way that XWayland typically runs, called rootless mode. Now, when an X11 client is spawned in rootless mode, this window integrates into the rest of your Wayland desktop. To the user, this just seems like a native Wayland window. If your compositor is a stacking compositor, the window is going to be stacked. If it's a tiler, the window is going to be tiled. It just seems like a Wayland window, as opposed to rootful mode when you spawn the window and the XWayland server is what has a window, and then the X11 client, that is going to be inside of that window, and the X11 server is what actually manages where the window is placed. Basically giving you a window inside of a window. Now, you can probably see why this is not the mode it runs in by default. Most people want to spawn a window and have it act like a normal window. However, there are use cases for Rootful, and I'm very happy it exists. I've suggested things like embedding a regular X11 window manager, say like Awesome WM, having that inside of it, and then running that on top of a really lightweight Wayland compositor, basically keeping these old desktops alive. And that's just one idea I had. When you make something like this available, there are going to be people out there that have these really weird use cases, and I'm sure someone has a really fun way to use this. And over the past year, with the addition of new features, Rootful mode has been getting quite a bit better. And recently, Olivia Fordham put out this blog post simply titled XWayland Rootful Part 1. If you need help naming a blog post, please shoot me an email. That is, incredible SEO. Now, doing this whole embedding an X server inside of another thing is not unique to Wayland. On the X11 side, there actually are nested X11 servers. Things like XNest and Zephyr are not only X11 servers, they're also X11 clients. So they will run inside of something like Xorg. And with these nested servers, you can run a full X11 environment. This can be useful for a number of reasons, like connecting remotely to a legacy Unix server using XDMCP, not that I would recommend that anyway, not that I would recommend just using this in the first place, but hey, sometimes you don't really have an option. Or for testing a particular X11 application with different window managers, or even because a particular X11 application is certified only with a specific window manager. The possibilities are endless. This is not something you will often see on desktop applications. Maybe there'll be like weird theming, maybe like, you know, it's supposed to work better in the KDE environment or the GNOME environment, but for the most part, this is something you'll really only see with these like businessy applications. Now, this isn't a problem on X11 because XNest and Zephyr are both X11 clients, but if you want to use either of these on Wayland, your stack ends up looking really stupid. So you have a Wayland compositor that is running XWayland, that is running an X server inside of it, that being Zephyr or XNest, which is then running an X11 client. So you have this additional X server that doesn't need to be there. Now, you're probably thinking, why would you want to do that? If you have XWayland, you can run it in rootful mode and then do what Zephyr and XNest were doing anyway without the additional server. Well, you could mostly do that because up until XWayland 23.1, XWayland Rootful would take its screen configuration from the Wayland compositor itself, meaning that when running Rootful, XWayland would map a surface the size of all the monitors, and the user would have no way to easily move or resize it. That's far from being practical, especially when using a multi-monitor setup. Basically, when you made a rootful window, the XWayland server assumed that you want to give it access to the entire desktop, and it assumes that's how big its window is. In my case, I have 3 monitors, and 2 of them are vertical. I don't want to give you access to that. I want you to have the thing that I gave you. There's a window here. That's how big your server is supposed to be. So as of 23.1 released back in March, a very simple option was added. Dash geometry, so that one can specify the desired size of the XWayland rootful window. That will grant you with a black window of the specified size. If you want a more retro look, you can get the classic stipple and the X cursor with -retro. Now, I don't know exactly why the classic look of X11 is having the like white and black pattern. I assume it's there because it gives you indication that something is working, because if it's just a black screen, you could think that it's not working and the system has just crashed. But we have a problem. GNOME exists, and this developer is a GNOME developer. Still, the XWayland window is missing a title bar that would allow for moving the window around. This is because Wayland does not decorate its surfaces. This is left to the Wayland clients themselves to add window decorations, also known as client-side decorations, or CSD for short. This is not at all accurate, because everything else that is not GNOME allows for server-side decorations. GNOME is just set on having CSD, even though it's kind of a pain. I joke. But if GNOME is not going to have server-side decorations, if you want something to be usable for a GNOME user, it needs to have at least something to do CSD. And adding that to XWayland would add a lot of complexity, which is primarily an X server, not a full-fledged Wayland application. Thankfully, we don't have to do that, because there is this thing called using a library and letting someone else do it. libdecor does exactly what is needed here, so just introduce that as an optional dependency, and there we go. If you need decorations, you can include the -decorate option, and you're good. And libdecor isn't just some random library that nobody uses. It's highly likely that by this point you probably have libdecor already installed, so in most cases, you're not even adding an extra dependency, it's just an extra thing that relies on a package you already have. The decorations that are here are very basic decorations, but they don't need to look good. You just need a bar to be able to grab, a thing to maximize, a thing to close, maybe a thing to minimize if you really care about that, and that's it. They don't need to look good, they just need to look. Now this is great for the GNOME users that for some reason don't have server-side decorations because, I don't know, why would you want a fallback? But that's not the only thing that has changed. If we go down a bit further, here we just have some fun running a window manager inside of XWayland. We have Xterm inside of that, and also setting the background. So this is like a full X server that you can do whatever X server things you want to it. This also includes messing around with XRender, not only querying the size of the window, but also changing it. This is really, really cool. So in here, we can run XRender and see the current size of the window, that being the one at the top here. But we can also go and change it to any size we want. This doesn't just change it internally. It actually resizes the window. That is, you know, it shouldn't be exciting, but that is really, really cool. Resizing a window is generally something that Wayland devs aren't a big fan of, but in this case, you can just do it, and it just happens, which I think is really, really cool. So if you need to be able to resize a window programmatically, XWayland Rootful is going to let you do it. Now, the other cool thing is what happens when you resize it and you're not doing it through XRender. So instead, you actually just physically resizing the window, like, with the compositor functions. So when you do that, it will actually regenerate new XRender profiles and list them when you query the size. It's a very tiny touch, but this just makes it all work seamlessly together. I have no idea what these recommendations are. Where do my normal VTuber and Asmongold stuff go? But regardless, I think all of these feature changes are really, really cool, and all of them are available right now. As of 23.2, this resize interactively thing, it just works. So if you want to go and mess around with it, you can do so right now. Go and run the commands you see being used in the video and throughout the rest of the blog post, and you can go and mess around with it. Now, my general hope is at some point in the future, you just don't need to use XWayland. Just for the average user, XWayland is completely unnecessary. Right now, that's not the case. And I hope that XWayland never goes away, because there's always going to be these weird edge cases where somebody needs it. Somebody's going to connect to a Unix server from 20 years ago that only supports Xorg and wants to be able to do like X11 transparency. Like, totally understandable. And there's going to be users like me that just want to experiment with some weird old X11 stuff that nobody really cares about. But we are going in a good direction, and having this be more featureful is certainly nice to see. And I'm happy that even though most people are never going to use Rootful mode, it is getting better, it's getting cooler, and for those people who need it, you now have more of a reason to use it. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have you ever messed around with Rootful mode? Did you know about rootless and Rootful mode and the fact that there's like two different things? I would love to know. And if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out Patreon, subscribes, linked in the description down below. That was bad. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna make some lunch. Enjoy the rest of the yeah, bye. Bye-bye.
Like this.